Right, everyone, welcome to the webinar. Feel free to type in the chat where you're from and why you joined today and what you're hoping to get out of the webinar. Feel free to turn your cameras on if we call on someone to ask any questions. We need to see your camera on so we can have an in-person discussion. So welcome to the Forteck tree planting webinar. Today is October 27th, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So I'm Brandon Soraka, founder of Forteck, and also actively the CEO of Forteck. And I'll be conducting the webinar today. We also have on from Forteck, Allison. If you want to give a wave and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Keenan. I'm the Human Resources Manager here at Forteck. Nice to meet y'all.
So if anyone is looking for a job or interested in our opportunities that we have with Forteck, you can direct message Allison or email careers@forteck.ca. So a bit about Forteck. So I'm Brandon Soraka. I founded Forteck in 2016. Forteck is a subsidiary company to TDS Forestry, which is founded in 1992. So we specialize in forestry services across Western Canada. So we actively operate in Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan. We have a focus on quality, accuracy, and safety. So a bit about my personal experience. I went to NAIT Forestry Tech in Edmonton, graduated from there and started working for my dad's company in the forest industry. I started out with doing a lot of development side of work, so cut block layout, tree measurements, timber cruising, all the pre-forestry type stuff. Over the years, I've had a fair bit of silviculture experience as well. So we manage tree planting of anywhere from 500,000 to a couple million trees a year on various sites. We do a lot of tree planting for oil and gas, as well as some for forestry companies. So today I'm going to touch a bit on tree planting in the forest industry and other industries, as well as some of the ways that we do things and what it's like being a tree planter, some of the quality concerns that could potentially happen when planting trees, some of the employment opportunities, as well. We'll touch on safety and equipment and a few other things. So yeah, that's a generic background on company Forteck. We'll get started with the webinar. So some goals that we have for this webinar is to provide education. So Forteck is here to assist in providing education to the forest people that are interested in the forest industry or that work in the forest industry, or the general public that maybe don't have as much knowledge about the industry that they wish they had. So we're here firstly to provide education. We're here to provide support. So if you work at a sawmill, a pulp mill, you're a consulting company, you have an interest or need in hiring someone to complete forestry service contracts for you, then we're here to have those kinds of conversations and see if there's any way that we can help assist you in your tree planting projects. Thirdly, we're here for networking. So we're here to build a community, have like-minded people in the industry where we can all connect and communicate about specific topics. Specifically today, it's around the topic of tree planting. So tree planting, when and why? So tree planting typically occurs or does occur after the harvest of trees. So once we're done logging, so it'd be post-harvest, typically in the spring or summer following harvest operations. So in Alberta specifically, tree planting season for spring plant is typically May 15th to June 30th. Summer plant would typically be June 1st, August 31st, and fall planting would be September, October. In general, spring and summer season is the best for tree planting because it's prime weather conditions for seedling growth, i.e. no frost. So some reasons to plant trees. So one of the main reasons would be to reforest a harvested area, reforest burnt pile areas. So that would be after brush pile burning, you'd come in and plant the burn holes, make sure that there's trees growing back there as well. Reforest road right-of-ways. That could be for forestry operations. That could be for any other sort of road deactivation that occurs. Improve forest growth. Some other industries that, other than the forest industry, that plant trees would be oil and gas. So oil and gas reclamation. We at Forteck do a lot of tree planting for orphan well sites and site rehab sites where after oil and gas activity, we can come in and prescribe site, look after the reclamation, earthwork, and plant trees on the sites, trees, shrubs, whatever needs to be done to bring it back to a more natural forest state and pass for REX certification. Seismic line and linear disturbance. There's a lot of work going on in the province of Alberta with that right now. So that would be another reason to tree plant, bring back old cut lines or seismic lines, road right-of-ways, things like that to a more natural forest state. Private land reforestation. Seem to be seeing more and more of this across Western Canada. There's a lot more government funds and initiatives coming out with opportunities to bring back forest from some agricultural land, especially along water sensitive sites. It's going to help a lot with erosion. It can have positive long-term effects for future generations to have forest in their area. There's a lot of great reasons to plant private land. Another one around private land reforestation that we're seeing a lot is, and planting in general, I guess, would be carbon credits. Quite often, we're seeing a lot more tree planting to offset carbon footprint on the globe. Mining and ground disturbance reclamation is another main reason to plant trees. So before you plant the trees, you have to grow the trees. Before you grow the trees, you have to get the seed. So it all starts with cone collection. So when you're picking cones or collecting cones, you would target the desired species for upcoming planting projects. In Alberta, primarily, you'd be targeting white spruce, lodgepole pine, black spruce. Cone harvest typically happens in the fall. This year in Alberta, we had a significant cone availability for white spruce. So I know of some very large, and we were actually part of a couple cone collections that happened of white spruce this fall. It was a really good crop year. We have a photo here of a sorting tray that photo creds to Ron Lavadier with Shakti Reforestation. So some of the ways to collect cones would be through ground or aerial cone collection. So with ground collection, it's typically going to happen in cut blocks that are being harvested, where the cone collectors basically pick the cones from the log decks laid down in the block or wherever they can find the cones in the block, and they just put them into pails and dump them into bags and transport them. An aerial cone collection, so this would typically happen when a helicopter flies a cone rake and hovers over the tree. It's a very cool process if you've ever seen it. And they basically strip the top of the tree off and drop the tree tops on the ground at a specific location so that the cone collectors can grab the cones. So yeah, if you have any questions while we're going through the webinar, you can feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. We have a couple question periods, one being right now. So if you have any questions so far, feel free to type in the chat, or feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question or raise your hand. So prepping the seed. So clean seeds are prepped and planted at a nursery. The extraction process depends on the species. Typically it's heated up in tumblers, and while it's being heated, it knocks all the seeds out. Seeds are typically planted in nursery between November to January for summer and spring plant. So when you're getting ready to plant, first things first, green side up, brown side down. It's pretty straightforward. So in the nursery, seedlings will be lifted and they'll be prepared for planting. They'll be transported to desired planting locations and stored there. And they'll be stored in either a reefer van or shade tents, typically. Sometimes we'll see snow caches as well. So we transport trees quite regularly for our projects. We've utilized reefer vans and other sorts of transport options, as well as shade tents. So if you are on here because you're interested to learn about becoming a tree planter, you can read this slide, it's for you. So a typical day planting trees would be wake up in either a planting camp, a hotel, or a crew house. Those are the most typical. Planting camps are probably the most common. And then when we're doing a lot more technical planting, like oil and gas reclamation, things like that, we're moving around a lot more. So quite often we're in hotels or crew houses or potentially oil field camps. So when you get started for the day, you're going to prep all your equipment and food for the day. You'll complete safety tailgate meetings, travel to site, and unload equipment that's required. Finish your tailgate safety meeting and safety forums. Make sure that everyone's fit for the job. Come up with your plans for the day of who's going to be doing what areas. That would typically be pre-built the night before by a field supervisor or a project manager, and presented to the team in the morning. Depending on where you're planting, there's certain safety requirements. When we're doing a lot of oil and gas, you're going to need to make sure that you have steel-toed boots, potentially coveralls, hard hat, safety glasses, full PPE. Depends what project you're on. There may be some less requirements for some safety equipment, depending on the scenarios. So you'll fill your planting bags with a couple hundred seeds and basically plant all day. So when you plant, you're going to be using a small shovel. You're going to basically be making sure that you have the right density and putting trees in the ground, making sure that you're hitting all quality specs, making sure the trees are in far enough that you don't have any J roots. Yeah, just making sure that you're doing a good job. It takes time and practice to get good at putting in quality trees at a decent production. Production. So I'm curious to know if you want to type in the chat if you are a tree planter. What's your biggest day? How many trees have you planted in a day? Curious to know. Type in the chat. What's your personal best? What's your average? What sort of ground conditions have you planted in? Some of the things that can definitely cause changes in production would be ground conditions. So if you end up in some really rocky ground, if it's steep, if you have slope, there's a lot of things when it comes to ground conditions that can affect the production of how many trees you get in the ground in a day. Access. So if you have to walk a long ways to get to your planting area. If you are right beside the pickup and you just jump out of the truck and you're at your block or at your planting site, then you may get more done in a day. Depending how you access the blocks, if you're going to ride ATVs, there's typically going to be a bit of travel time to get to the blocks. If you use helicopter, it may be a lot faster. So yeah, we have a few people typing in the chat here. Best 1,200 a day, average just above 900. We got 23,810 in 3.5 days. Wow. Jack is Monty. Hey, Monty. Yeah, so I would say on our projects that we do within Forteck, I think we base most of our projects on 1,500 trees a day. We typically work in a lot flatter ground areas, or we have in the past. So usually production isn't too big of a concern. We have some projects where some of our guys are putting into around 5K a day on the high end. And we have some tree planters that work with us that, average 3,000 to 4,000 pretty much every day. But I would say more common number would be between 1,000 to 2,000, somewhere in that range. Oil and gas sites, we often see around 1,500 roughly a day. Safety, safety, safety. So a few things about working with Forteck. We're core certified in Alberta. We are SAFE certified in British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Some things to look out for when you're planting in regards to safety is ensuring that you have proper PPE and footwear. Some additional things to watch out for is planter's hip, tendonitis, and planter's fingers. Anyone with extensive experience on here would know what those are. Any questions so far? Feel free to type in the chat, raise your hand. We have a question here in the chat. It says, do you ever plant anything other than trees? That's a really great question. Thanks for asking. We do actually. We've planted shrubs a lot of, we've planted different types of shrubs such as dogwood. We do willow staking as well. So willow staking can be done with either willow or balsam poplar. So quite often we'll actually willow stake and balsam poplar stake, which you would go into the bush nearby, cut off nearby or at a desired site and cut off the some stems that are growing in the forest, and you would basically put them into the wetter ground areas with the right side up. And if it's got good enough conditions, they'll actually just grow from direct site plant. So that's something that we actually do quite a bit of, especially in wetter sites. There's a lot of willow in the area, things like that. We'll often do willow staking. We planted willow plugs as well. So you can, in the nurseries, they'll grow willow, dogwood, blueberry, various other types of shrubs. We actually did a project recently where we planted stinging nettle. So that was kind of interesting. Thanks for that question. Any other questions for the question period?
Yeah, hey Brandon, this is Monty here.
Hey.
Hey, I had a few notes on that that maybe I'll just copy and paste and put into a chat, because it does deal extensively with that. Like it's just talking about value-added nurseries for other species, like for riparian management, riparian reclamation, and perhaps even selling that to some degree to some of the mills.
Yeah.
As another way for them to do like carbon credit offset, snow fencing, wind breaking, flood fire mitigation, etc. Maybe I'll just copy and print that or forward that in an email.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. You could send that to me.
I've got three sort of questions or points that go with sort of value added sort of stuff that kind of tie into what Mike, I think it was, or somebody just mentioned here. Michael, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, no, that'd be awesome.
I'll just
Uh,
pop that on.
I actually did a webinar with Amanda Schoonmaker. She's works at the Center for Boreal Research in Peace River. It's
Okay.
on Industry Talks with Forteck on YouTube. I don't know if any of our staff could type it in the chat, find the link and type it in the chat, but it's really
Oh, I
really
can
good.
find it.
It's a really good one to look at as well. Amanda's very experienced in the research side of tree planting for reclamation sites, so primarily lease sites and upland sites primarily. So there was a lot of great conversations that we had in that. But yeah, Monty, definitely email me the information and I'll take a look at that, and we could share it around with everyone who signed up for the webinar as well.
Thanks. Okay.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions for now, we'll move on to the next slide. So yeah, some of the quality concerns that to look out for, probably the most common one would be J-root. So making sure that you don't do those. Looking for the density, so making sure that you're hitting the density requirements. That'll typically be discussed at like a project kickoff. Your supervisor will let you know what density they want to be planted at. Depth, so making sure that you have proper depth, that the roots aren't sticking out still, or that it's too deep. Leaners would be another thing to look for. Those are just some of the most common ones, I guess. There's probably a few other, but those are some things to look for. I see that Allison typed in the chat here, Industry Talks with Forteck conversation that I had with Amanda Schoonmaker. It was in depth on lease site reclamation specifically in upland sites. So some more on safety. We use site docs for all of our staff. So there's no more paper trail, paper that gets lost. Everyone that works at Forteck downloads an app called Site Docs, and on that app you can complete your tailgate meetings, any incidents that happen or near misses, any hazard observations. We also provide a weekly update to all of our clients. So each week, typically on Monday, if you're a client of ours, you'll receive a weekly email that gives all sorts of information such as production, quality, crew scheduling, how the last week went, logistical concerns, access concerns, as well. We'll include all the safety reports that are required. So if it's important for you as a say a mill or a consulting company that your contractors submit near misses and incidents and stuff for your safety plan, then we definitely got you covered there. Some of the nice things about Site Docs, it's available offline, and it syncs when you're online, so you can capture information out in the field, out of service, and as soon as you hit online, it'll upload your reports. As well, you can access all of the company's SOPs, forms, reports, safety manual, things like that. Tree planting equipment. So yeah, when you're transporting trees, you're gonna obviously have various types of transport. So that could be like a reefer van, it could be a truck with a tree transport trailer or canopy on the back. When you get to ATV transport, that could be UTVs as well. This could be UTV, ATV. Quite often we use Argo in northern Alberta and northeastern British Columbia, just due to the wet terrain. A lot of times you can't quad into some of these sites. And then obviously helicopter would be very commonly used all across Western Canada, Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, where we operate. Very often going to be using helicopter and slinging in the trees and flying in the crews. So for Forteck, we ensure equipment maintenance on everything. Trevor's our fleet manager. I'm not sure if he's on here today, but he ensures that all of our equipment is maintained regularly. If something needs replaced, he ensures that it gets replaced at a shop, or that he goes and actually swaps out equipment. So yeah, I think we have 24 ATVs and a couple side-by-sides that could all be used for transporting trees if needed. Some additional stuff, if you're a planter, you're going to obviously need your planting bags, your shovel, and plot cord. So yeah, we're looking to hire. Forteck has a target of planting 2 million trees for next summer. So we're working on getting those contracts lined up right now. Could be in Alberta, BC, or Saskatchewan. And yeah, we have quite a few senior experienced veteran planters with us that come back year after year. As well, we have some more entry-level opportunities available. So if you are interested in working with Forteck for either planting or any of our other services, you can feel free to email resume to careers@forteck.ca. Our planting rates are pretty good. I think most of our rates for Alberta that we've been doing around 21 cents a seedling, something like that, depending on area. Rate will fluctuate a bit. So yeah, if you're interested in submitting a resume, just email careers@forteck.ca with the subject line tree planting. It's in the chat there. We have one question here that says, how many crew usually assigned per area? So that's going to depend on, I guess, how big your area is. So if we're planting leaf sites, they're usually 1 hectare to 2 hectares. So 100 meters by 100 meters to 200 meters by 200 meters, something like that. Typically, we would have 2 planters in an area like that. So we may, if we're doing helicopter fly-in, we may fly 2 planters into one site, 2 planters into another site, and run like 4 planters and just bump from leaf site to leaf site. If you're doing large scale cut block, you may have multiple crews or multiple planters in a block or area. You may have one crew split up and take one side of the block and another crew take the other side of the block. It's all going to sort of depend on what the supervisor wants for number of staff in each area. If you get too many staff in a small area, you start bumping into each other, and it's not super efficient. But if you end up with not enough staff, they may just take forever to plant the area. So those are a few things to consider. Yeah, so typically we always have at least a pair of 2 planting, and everyone would typically have a radio and be in communication with each other for safety reasons. So yeah, Rachel, tree planting typically starts, really it depends where you're at. If you're on the coast, you could be starting in like February. But here in Alberta, we typically would start in May, around May 15th. And we're typically done by the end of August. Sometime September 10th, 15th would be sort of late. So yeah, there's a spring plant, summer plant, and then fall plant. So yeah, it's really going to depend on where you're at. If you're somewhere with a drier, warmer climate where the snow's gone, early Q1, then you may be able to start planting a lot earlier, and you may be able to plant it way into the fall as well. Planting's typically never done in the snow. With that being said, there's some people that are planting in the snow now. It's sort of new. I don't have much experience with that, but maybe someone in the chat does. I don't know. So yeah, if you're looking to hire Forteck, we have a capacity to plant roughly 2 million trees for the 2023 planting season. We're working on getting those contracts in place right now. So if you are interested in hiring us, feel free to reach out sooner than later so that we can accommodate your planting needs. We also have opportunity to complete hole mounding or ripping, so any kind of site prep. We have a couple joint ventures with some heavy equipment companies. So if you're interested in those services, feel free to reach out to myself. My contact info will be at the end of the presentation here. We provide helicopter services as well, so we can fly in crews to projects. We can sling trees, do the whole shebang. we complete site planting prescriptions. So if you're looking to get some prescriptions completed, basically plans for planting, we can do that. As well, we can submit tree orders and complete cone collection. So my number, if you're interested, I'll just type it in the chat here. It's 780-836-6083. You can feel free to reach me at. So Forteck does provide a wide array of services. Here's our extensive list. So we have cut block layout, consulting, GIS planning, environmental inspections and monitoring, logging, permitting, coordinating, drone surveys and imaging, tree planting, brush pile burning, timber scaling, seed collection, grass seeding, tree falling, reclamation and remediation, silviculture surveys, timber cruising, logistical planning, hotshot service, legal surveying, fire smart projects, waste and residue surveying, ATV and trailer rentals. We do some logging through some joint ventureships, as well as site prep and heavy equipment. We do leaf spraying and some spraying. As well, we provide helicopter services and more. So our long-term vision for the company is to be able to provide every service within the scope of forestry and environmental services in Western Canada. So if you want to get in touch to hire Forteck for your next project, you can feel free to reach out to either myself, Brandon Soraka, or Nicole Soraka, who's our business development representative. So again, my number is 780-836-6083. Nicole's is on the screen there as well at 780-882-5440. Or you can drop us an email, brandon.soraka@forteck.ca, or email nicole.soraka@forteck.ca. If you are interested in applying for a job, it's in the chat. That's careers@forteck.ca.